Do you know how powerful you are?
Welcome to Rise Urban Nation.
Welcome everybody to Rise Urban Nation.
Reshaping and elevating your mindset to help you achieve what you believe.
Sometimes we don't even see our own greatness. You can't be what you can't see.
And connecting Black cultures to build a community of talent and success.
Black people need to realize that they are assets. You are an asset.
When we rise, you rise.
Come together as a group.
This is Rise Urban Nation with Terrell Simmons.
Testing 1 2 3, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Rise Urban Nation. I'm your host with the most, Terrell Simmons. This guest that I have today is an amazing young soul. Ever meet somebody and you just have a kindred soul type connection? That's what I have with this young lady. She must be my soul sister. Let me see, Jasmine LeFlore. Like, what can I say about her? Amazing young talent out here in San Diego who has built this Greater Than Tech program where she's done initiatives like Girl Meets Drone to help inner city young girls get introduced to engineering through the use of drones and technology and coding and all that good stuff. I've worked with several nonprofits out here, and that's not even her day job, right? Aerospace, or I want to say engineer by day. Hopefully I'm not getting that wrong. I always confuse aeronautical aerospace. They might be one and the same, but without further ado, let me just get into the episode because it's a great episode. Get to learn about her journey and how she's gotten to where she is. And hopefully you enjoy her as much as I did. Enjoy talking to her as much as I did. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Jasmine LeFlore. We in full effect. Hey. Oh, hey. I love the Michigan. I love the Michigan. You repping over there. I see you.
Always. It's Michigan State game today. So
all right, you ready for it? This
I'm always ready.
this like the mini Super Bowl right here.
Yeah, like these games like divide families, like all the smack talk from all my Michigan State friends. Yeah, this is like a thing.
It's about to get serious. It's about to be real, like real.
Yep.
All right. Welcome everybody, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Risepreneurs. I got the amazing, the outstanding, the fabulous, never been another. She is my sister from another Mr. Jasmine LeFlore.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
We fresh off the San Diego startup weekend scene. It's great seeing you again out there. Did you get some good connections out there?
I'm always getting good connections. So
You know what? She was more connected than I was. I've been in and out the scene for a minute. She just is in there, and I was like, she's like, you know such and such? No, I don't know that. Like, I know such and such. Oh, let me introduce you. I'm like, all right, well, let me hang with you then, because you know everybody.
All intentional.
Yeah, look, I'll keep telling folks that's gonna be. Look, if you've heard it anywhere, if you haven't heard her name by now, let me tell you first here on Risepreneurs that she's gonna be the next person on one of those stages getting those awards that we was at last night.
Yes.
I'm putting that in the universe. Hopefully you catching it and receiving it.
Yes, I receive it.
So let's go through the journey though. Let's go through the journey from how we get that Michigan shirt on. Wait, how did you get into Michigan? Give me that story. Like,
oh, it's such a long story. Oh my gosh! Like, basically, I said I wanted to go, and I got there by any means necessary.
Is this a family tradition? Like, what? Why Michigan out of all places?
Well, born and raised from Flint, Michigan. So, anything around Michigan, it's basically like, oh, Michigan State. We are a very seriously spirited state, and there is a University of Michigan, Flint. So typically, that's where a lot of folks go. That's where my mother went, and I wanted to do engineering. So the aerospace part starts with me living by an airport, being a little kid, like, hey, how do these planes fly? How are they in the air? And my mom was an educator, so all she would say is, maybe one day you'll have a job and you'll know how to answer that question. She literally never told me how to do anything. Everything was, I don't know, Jasmine, what do you think? Or, I don't know, you tell me. So I just had to make my own decisions for a lot. And that said, the spark on how do I connect the dots from how do I learn about these planes to getting to University of Michigan, I went on a college tour with this program I was in. It was called the Carrera Program. And we ended up touring the University of Michigan Aerospace Department. So I was in the 9th grade, and that was like, oh, this is where I go to learn. So that day kind of changed the whole plan trajectory, because everything from here on out was, okay, how do I get into this school? And at the time, it was the #1 aerospace school in the US. So I was so determined. And truth be told, I didn't get into the engineering school at all. I actually didn't.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
They missed out. They missed out on opportunity. They lost, not yours.
Well, the fact is, I ended up obviously graduating from there. Didn't start there, but I finished there. But I mean, that journey in itself was pretty treacherous, because I had to do a summer program before my freshman year to kind of like catch up and be able to compete on the same level as all my freshman class peers. So I had to take the summer of 2010 and do some additional classes. I was in the College of Literature, Science, and Art, so I had to take all these prerequisites to try to transfer. Things weren't necessarily going great, but I still talked to the right people and kind of switched the path to get there. So make a long story short, I did graduate from there, but that was definitely not a cookie cutter story of you apply, you get in, and then you graduate.
Hey, the road to success is always not cookie cutter. Like, people think it's this lateral thing, but sometimes it's just like what you do in engineering. You tinker around with some things, and then you find solutions, and then voila, here we go. I'm always amazed when I hear stories, especially when I see like just amazing Black people like yourself, Black women in engineering, because I don't see that too much. Like, what is it like being a Black woman in engineering? Like, give me the real. Give me the real. Don't give me that. Don't give me the sugar. Don't give me the sugar. Give me the real.
Hey, how much time you got? Because
I feel like it's I feel like it's a male dominated industry.
You're feeling
am I wrong in saying that, or is
you are spot on.
Okay, spot on. And then to be a woman of color in a male dominated industry, that's a whole nother thing. So just to see you in there doing it, props to you. But how is that?
You know how they say you got to work twice as hard to get half the results?
Yeah.
It's like triple as hard to get triple. I mean, a fraction of that double. So, I mean, you have to be very strong-willed to get things done. I'll speak to the aerospace industry specifically. So, fun fact, the aerospace industry, or aerospace of all the engineering disciplines, is the most white and male. So, not only just being a Black woman in engineering, but aerospace specifically is like the least of me. That said, I had a strong passion and desire for aerospace. So I feel like that's what was a part that kept me there and engaged. Like, I really like the work. I really like, what aerospace is all about. But I felt that I had to, I felt, this is past tense, had to assimilate in a lot of ways just to gain respect and be heard. And honestly, I've had so many conversations with other people who, are women of color, or just women, or BIPOC in this space. And a lot of them leave. And I mean, there's a lot of data that says that, but because they feel like they're not being heard, or they can't get things done, or nobody respects them. And,
Yeah.
There's just all this subjectivity on who gets what promotion and who is considered a leader, and, who is someone who's considered a good leader or direct, or, the positive words that people put around men when it comes to like aggression and leadership, they put negative words around women, like it's almost like I can't act like a Chad because that's not my makeup. So if I'm aggressive and if I'm this straight shooter person, it doesn't translate in the same way it would for a man, because like they're not used to seeing that.
Yeah, understandable. As you know, I'm with Village Up, and you are too now. So welcome to the family. And before you came on, we had that survey we put out with diverse founders, and we had a amazing panel of women who were just courageous to kind of share their truth, and a lot of them were CEOs, business owners, and I remember one young lady who was in the automotive industry who used to fix cars, and I think she was on the race car team.
She's in the wreck.
Yeah, and I remember her just sharing her truth about like how disrespected she was in the industry, and how there you go, boom, and how it takes a toll on your mental health, and then you get imposter syndrome. But she knew her stuff; she was good. And then once she got out that environment, did her own thing. She still had her struggles, but she did better than being in that industry, because it just wasn't built for her. It wasn't a good fit for her.
It wasn't built for her. That is a thread, because at times I felt like I was seen as a dog walking on my hind legs because I was so different. So it's like I had to get over that, like, oh, they're not looking at me because they don't like me. They're just like, oh, you've never seen this makeup doing this thing. So the imposter part, sometimes can be kind of self-inflicted, but also the projections that come with that is, it just feels like you're on a microscope or in a microscope. So it's, I don't know, there's this whole connotation on what imposter syndrome is. So it's kind of like it's not a you problem, it's a they problem.
Gotcha. And then here you go, coming up in the place and then blazing away for women, and especially women of color, girls of color, that kind of do their thing. And we're going to go into that more in the show. Before we go in that deep dive into like what you're doing with Girl Meets Drone and all that other stuff, the amazing stuff you creating, for a little girl who's probably going to be inspired by your story, I know you've probably done internships, you probably done all that good stuff, but what was, because I like to see people's progression to where they're at today. What was, I just out of curiosity, what was your first job?
Like my first W-2 or my first engineering?
Ooh, okay. Give me the both. Give me the skinny. They would say, give me the both. Give me the first engineering job, and then let me give you the first W-2. Tell me about your, because it looks like that entrepreneurial endeavor was over there somewhere too. So you got a little bit of both of you. I can't just give you half of yourself.
Sure. Well, my first W-2 was McDonald's. So I was in high school. Mickey D, shout out to Ronald McDonald. I was in high school. I was trying to save up for a car and my senior pictures, all the things that seniors do when they're trying to graduate. I would go to class, go to school. I would be at McDonald's like 5 to 8 every evening. So that was really my first time seeing how a company works, systems, processes. Like, I still remember all of the times that you have to have things done. Like, you should be able to go through a McDonald's drive-through in 3 minutes or less. So every time I'm at McDonald's, I'm literally like, this process is working. This process is working.
You're engineer. Somebody is not following the process.
Yeah. But I mean, that was me in high school working there, but I still remember all those numbers and those systems. So that was my first exposure to oh, like there's a lot of precision that happens to make something be a well-oiled machine.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and that was also my first time really seeing like the hierarchical, those levels. The managers wear this shirt and the fry cooks wear this shirt. And that was
Like
my
there's
first time
levels to
understanding.
this.
Yeah. So that was the first job. And I liked working at McDonald's. I was cool with my coworkers. We would hang out. Like it was fun. When I went to college, my first job there was, oh man, what was it? I think it was a work study job for sure. Oh, I worked in the computer science department as a student services assistant. So that also gave me insight on how the computer science department worked, what classes they had to take, because mind you, I didn't start off in engineering, but because I was in a work study job that was in the engineering department, I could see the requirements on the other side of the table. So because I didn't make it in, there's also this like computer science engineering track and then computer science like LSNA, like computer science without the engineering. There were two paths. So I've always been this if then type of person. Like if this works, then boom. If this works, boom, like plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. So because at the time I wasn't in engineering, I was really considering going into computer science without the engineering off the strength of I like tech and I wanted to be as close to it as possible by any means necessary. And you can do so much with coding, computer science. So me seeing all of like, okay, this is what it takes. I was like, okay, plan B, plan C. We're going to get this computer science degree. So that was another way of just seeing like the other side of how things work and what needs to be done.
You know what? For some reason, I just thought you always was about that engineering life, and you just knew engineering was it from. So like hearing this now, I was like, oh, so there was two different plans in play.
No, like the plan was always like the goal was always University of Michigan aerospace engineering, but the path was, did it make it into engineering? Did it make it here? Did it make it there? Okay, what's this trajectory? All right, we got to figure something out. So me even considering
got it.
was because I wasn't in engineering at the time. I do panels and stuff for some college students. They're like, how'd you feel when you took Engine 101? So Engine 101 is that introductory class to programming. You learn MATLAB, you learn C++. Well, the literature, science, and arts class equivalent is EECS 183. So I took basically the equivalent classes to the engineering classes because I wasn't in engineering. So I have this like fragmented, like the beginning classes are the same classes that transfer, but I never actually sat in the real life engineering one session classes.
Nice.
So the path was always engineering, but the steps to get there wasn't,
Look, you done gave a $1 million worth of game right there. No pun intended. Shout out to them boys that do that podcast. So if any of y'all young people listening, you see, there's more than one way to get it. There's more than one way to get it. So
and subtle flex, but and I'm not promoting this, but what happened was because I started off in College of Literature, Science, and Arts, my tuition was actually cheaper than a typical. So if I would have been in engineering for 4 years, my tuition would have been higher. But since I was technically only in engineering for about 2 years, and the first 2 years was College of Literature, Science, and Arts, I was paying a lower tuition rate.
That's what I'm talking about. Now I'm curious to know. All right, so now that we know the steps you get to get the education and the foundation to it, was the journey into the job market and then career and business the same? Like, what were the steps that you took to get into your career and the business fields and industries that you now kind of tinker and reside in?
loaded question. I mean, honestly, like the theme is like by any means necessary.
Right. So tell me the means. You're like, I mean, you. I know you got a blueprint already how you did it. So please do tell.
Okay, so fast forward, we get into engineering, we make it to aerospace. Then the next phase is, all right, now we need a job. Like we need to have a aerospace. What's good is an aerospace engineering degree if I can't get an aerospace engineering job. So I was really involved with National Society of Black Engineers on campus. So very involved with that group. We had resume writing sessions. We had industry folks come in, give us advice. There's this big thing that happens every year called the NSBE National Conference. So that is where a lot of Black engineers get their first jobs. So when I was graduating, I was getting calls for an interview, like a pre-screening. And it was from, at the time, United Technologies. Now our name is Raytheon Technology. So they were calling about like, hey, we're going to be at the NSBE conference, but they never actually gave me an interview time. So it told me that, oh, they're interested in me, but something is holding them back from actually giving me an interview. Oh, well, typically, Terrell, I mean, you have an HR background. There are these metrics in place that determines if you are a good fit or not. What are those metrics? The GPA. What's that standard? Well, I think it was 3.2. I think you had to have a 3.2 to really be seen by a recruitment professional. Well, I didn't have that. So I'm like, oh, they keep calling me because they're interested, but they're not giving me an interview because my GPA. Got it. I called them back before the conference like, hey, I'm getting the calls. Do I have an interview? And the guy on the other line is saying, well, not really, but you can talk to this person when you get there. So there's this thing that big companies do is called a hospitality suite. And at the hospitality suite, that is where they give you an invitation to who they're actually intending on interviewing. So because I wasn't, I didn't get an interview, but I got a name, but I wasn't really invited to the hospitality suite. So because I saw that the hospitality suite was going and I had the name of the person, I just showed up.
What?
I just showed up.
Okay.
What do I have to lose? I need a job.
That's true.
What do I have to lose?
Shoot your shot.
Yeah. So went in and the first recruiter I see, he looks at the resume. At the time, the trick was, okay, you have one resume with the GPA and one without. You just, whatever they need to see, you let them see it. So I had the GPA on the resume and he sees it. He's like, oh, well, I don't know if this is a good fit. Just, like, he was intending on everyone in that room to be someone who was this like rock star and high GPA. So he probably was looking at me in that room like, how'd she get here? So I say, hey, can you introduce me to such and such? And he says, oh, well, I could, but I don't think he's going to want to talk to you. And I say, that's okay. You can introduce me anyway. And he has this look on his face like, okay. So he introduces me to the hiring manager, and him and I chop it up. He's quizzing me on all these different requirements and types of, just like the entry-level questions that you probably get in a pre-screening. And he's like, okay, we're going to interview tomorrow. So I end up getting the job. I end up, actually being able to work for this company, but it was me just not taking no for an answer. I knew I wasn't supposed to be there, but I wasn't going to let you tell me that someone didn't want to talk to me. That's okay. I want to talk to him.
No, you were supposed to be there. They just didn't know you were supposed to be there.
That's what it really was. So that was the journey for the first job. So I got hired through the NSBE conference. My first job was in Connecticut. I was a rotating machinery component integrated product team lead. And what does that mean?
Nice.
I worked on this really cool component called an air cycle machine. And basically that is the machine that creates the flow. You know how when you're on a plane and you screw that little ticker at where the air blows. So the air cycle machine is what helps produce that air. So on regional jets, I was the lead for that. So basically, I was that component owner. Anything that happened in the field, meaning if there was a problem that concerned that particular component, they would call me, and I would have to come up with some root cause corrective action on how to replace it. What are the steps? What do you recommend that the technicians do? Another piece of that is just it's called certification and qualification and engineering tests. So not only was I the person that handled if there were issues in the field, but when it came to redesigning and developing that next iteration of that machine, I was the one proving out those tests and making sure that it was sustainable to fly. So it's project engineering, but it's kind of like you're that cradle to grave owner of a product.
That's an amazing story. I'm glad you.
Job. It was a really fun job. Like I got to work with so many different people. I got to go to the shop floor, work with the technicians, and that was also my first understanding of like, oh, engineers and technicians, their relationship is different. There's this like divide, but I had to be able to speak to both, Yeah,
it's almost like they speak two different languages, and you got to be in there to be able to translate.
And honestly, I feel like my job has been this master translator because as a project engineer, I would work with design engineers, I would work with stress engineers, I would work with quality, so I always describe it as the project engineer is the person that is getting all the ingredients to make the cake, but they have to bake it and give it to the customer. So I have to make sure we're measuring it with enough flour, make sure we have enough sugar. Hey, I need that sugar on time though. You holding up the cake. So
and I need a certain type of sugar. I need that sugar from Italy and Florence, not that sugar that you get from over there.
Right. So you have to make everything come together.
Gotcha. And big shout out to Nesby and shout out to my good friend Jay and Harps who's out here who be running the city of Nesby over in San Diego. I know I've been to a couple of his events, done some events with him as well.
Shout out to Nesby, but full solid, for life, forever.
I ain't mad at that.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
All right. So what's because that was an amazing story. You got me hyped up about wanting to tinker a little bit more in engineering, but I'm gonna stay in my lane. but what's some advice you would give to someone who would like to start a career in your industry?
So there's so much information out there. So the thing is, because just aerospace technology engineering itself is so broad and vast, I think the best thing to do to start is just to do the research to know what you want to do. I took that traditional path of the 4-year university, but truthfully,
but you took the traditional path for the 4 years, but you didn't take the traditional path once you got in there. You gave us some bars.
No. But I mean, to start,
take the traditional path.
My interpretation of how do I get there is, okay, I got to get the 4-year degree. Gotcha. So that is obviously one of the main paths. But if we're just talking technology, if we're just talking engineering, there's just so many more ways to break into that field that don't require the 4 years. There's all these certificates you can get from Google. There's all these different specialized classes. So what I'm trying to say is you don't have to invest the 4 years unless you're really ready for that. I'd recommend do the research to figure out what you want to do, but then maybe take like a certificate class, maybe, a coding boot camp just to see if you enjoy that and if you like that. And then if you want to dive deeper, okay, maybe consider that 4 years. But a lot of people I know, they commit and then they're like, oh yeah, I'm not even an engineer. I hated engineering. So it's kind of like test that temperature for yourself. But I mean, I was a little kid that was either like, oh, I'm going to figure out how these planes work by any means. That was my narrative and that was my story. So I knew what I wanted to do. But if you're interested and you're still thinking about in what way you want to be in tech or engineering or aerospace, YouTube University is the GOAT.
Yeah.
I need to come in today. So
I would do you one better. I say, find you a little program that allows you to tinker with something. And speaking of programs, you got a little program that allow young ladies to kind of get their first foot in the door and see if this is the life for them, if they about this life, or just expand their knowledge in the field of engineering.
yeah.
Girl Meets Drone. I remember Sholo telling me all about this. She was all up in my age. Like, you got to meet Jasmine. Oh, my daughter did this Girl Meets Drone program. Da, da, da.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right. And then I get into Village Up. Somebody like, oh, you got to meet Jasmine. Da, da, da. I was like, okay, I guess Jasmine, I need to meet her. And then we meet. And then I've kind of found out you would Rise too. You would Rise San Diego. It was like, oh, you gotta meet Jasmine. Like, Jasmine's in Rise too. She in all the spaces I've been.
We was gonna meet any. We was gonna meet. It's so funny. We was gonna connect it somehow, Terrell. It was inevitable.
It was inevitable.
So I co-founded an organization called Greater Than Tech, and it's all about teaching girls the intersectionality of engineering and business. We specialize in middle school girls and underserved communities, but our recent program, Grow Me Strong, was middle and high school. So, kind of backtracking to my story, I was in a robotics program in high school. I did a pre-college engineering program. So all the things that align to the type of like early exposure you can do to become an engineer, I had that as a kid. So now that I'm an engineer and I feel like there is this gap of folks who need the exposure, I wanted to create something that allowed them to not only see engineering, but also be able to see it applied to real world problems, the social impact piece. Drones being an industry that is pretty new and still not necessarily defined. There's a lot of regulations. There's a lot of things that aren't fully set in stone. So in my mind, I'm like, hey, this is that new hot industry that will be booming in the next 10, 20, 30 years. So let's expose these girls earlier on. So if they want to go down that path of drones, they can. But not only just let's teach them the technology of drones, but let's also teach them all the different ways that drones can be used. Let's also show them that, hey, you can also start your own drone business if you want. We had Jamar Williams there. We had Sam Scully there. And we had our program sponsor come out. So Collins Aerospace was our key program sponsor. And then Otters Cares as well. But the goal was we want you to define your whole path in tech. So when you ask me, how do I break into this industry? I'm like, well, the thing is, there's a lot of different ways now. And then especially if you're a kid, like the kids that I serve, you can do a program with me, but then there's all these other resources that I want you to have access to. And the goal is for the girls that want to continue with their drone path, I want to establish those pathways for them to get there. It's a brave new world, like breaking into tech, I'm trying to make it equitable and accessible.
Ooh, I love that. Equitable and accessible. And you sure are breaking a path. And I can't wait for my little girl to grow up to be in your program. Because real talk, we need more programs like this because I didn't have anything like this when I was growing up at high school, at least. And I don't think there's enough programs out there in every school across the nation to expose
not in underserved
girls
schools.
of color, to these career pathways. And we only know what our parents know, and our parents didn't get exposure to it. So unless they're in that field, and so they're not going to know how to navigate that world or what program to put us in to get us more exposure to it.
No, and I feel like what you said is very key because I did the engineering path. I work for a big engineering company, but when it comes to the leadership aspect, and I'm a big proponent of, I want to come up with solutions and get things done. And if you're not in a system that allows you to do that, then in my mind is, okay, I got to still do it. But obviously I got to do it somewhere else because I can't do it here. So that was really the genesis of how Greater Than Tech was established. I feel like this is a problem that I'm willing to solve, but I'm not in an environment that allows me to solve it here. So I got to do it over here. So that was an aha moment for me. And that was also one of my first introductions to, oh, this is what an entrepreneur is. This is what an entrepreneur does.
Yeah.
Even me, going down the engineering path, I really didn't understand or learn about entrepreneurship until maybe 3 years into my engineering career. And by that time, I'm like, oh, so you mean to tell me if I would have knew that startup existed and if entrepreneurship was a viable career future, especially in tech, I could have created the next. We have to teach these little girls that they can love technology, they can love engineering, they can love math, they can love aerospace, but there's more than one path to actually apply that knowledge and skill set.
Yeah, and you can be all those things, and I think you're kind of just a living example of that. You're not just an engineer. You're an engineer. You're a leader. You're a project manager. You're a philanthropist. You're entrepreneur, nonprofit, soon to be squashiant. I'm making up words now.
I'm like, yes.
You're a Renaissance woman. You like a jack of all trades. Because I see you on these different spaces, and from the Rise Urban Leadership Program to Startup Weekend to engineering conferences and spaces. So I love it. I love it in the school system, working with girls and working with nonprofit organizations. I love everything you're doing, and for such a young woman, I feel you are wise beyond your years. We gotta
give it up to Rise, because that is a community of people that is really helping with the inner. Like, just
speak.
The leadership starts in the inner, and it's all about like working through your stuff to be a leader that can help the folks that you want. So it's like I'm doing a lot of internal work right now, and it's just like it's changing my perspective, it's making me a better person, and I'm gonna be better for it, and so will the community. So shout out to Rise.
Yeah, shout out to Rise San Diego. This podcast is a deviate of my cat project. My cat project started off as something else, and then it ended up turning into this podcast. So if it wasn't for Rise, you may have not seen Rise Urbanation, this podcast.
Yeah. That's dope. I love that. Because when I saw it as Rise, I was like, oh, what was he in Rise? Was he like, is it a play on Rise San Diego? Yeah.
It's a play. There's some play on there, some word play on there too. With all that being said, at this point in life, I feel like there's a nugget in there somewhere. You already gave us so many gems. What's one good lesson life has taught you?
So I think it would be, I don't want to say it so negatively, but this is my lesson. Never take advice from anyone you wouldn't trade places with.
Ooh.
That one has been, I don't know if I saw it on Twitter, I don't know if I saw it on TikTok, but that one hit for me. And I think it hit so much because there were a lot of naysayers that didn't think I could achieve where I am. But I had to recognize like that was their narrative. It's not a projection. It's not because of who I am. It's who they are and what they've seen. And when it comes to the trading places part, I'm like, honestly, if I don't want to sit where you sit, I kind of shouldn't be listening to you. So I say that positively, but you know,
respectfully,
I'm not listening to you.
I used to who was I talking to? One of my cousins I was talking about, like and then sometimes uncles, friends of friends give advice. I'm like, you know what you should do? You should da 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 da. And I'm like, and then another friend like, you know, you should listen to such and such because he said da 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 da. I'm like, why would I take advice from him?
I can't.
I'll take his advice with a grain of salt. It's like for me taking advice from this individual is like if I'm trying to get in shape and this person is out of shape, I'm taking advice from somebody who's out of shape on how to get in shape. What does that sound like? And I'm in better shape than them.
Yeah, I feel like Kanye said it. He's like, they could everyone can tell you how to do it. They never did it. I don't know what song that is, but that's it.
There you go. I forgot you like to speak in lyrics like me sometimes.
I do. That's how I bring life to my situations.
Yeah.
But
so wait, what do you think the future has in store for your industry? And you could, because since you're multifaceted, you could speak to the engineering and then the tech and entrepreneurship piece to girls, if you like when you look at those two industries, what do you think the future has in store?
I mean, the thing is, I feel like it's a combination of so many things. Like the tech industry by itself is just thriving, booming, growing. Like it feels endless on the possibilities, but also we know there's this great resignation going on, and we know that there's so many conversations about the future of work that honestly, I just feel like it is a fair game. I think the 9 to 5 is in its last days. I think the 40 hours a week, like I think a lot of things about just how industries work, corporations work, I think that is going to be very difficult to uphold with especially these new generation of kids who are watching Charlie D'Amelio on TikTok and trying to figure out how they can get 1 million likes. So I just think there's this like cosmoplasm of like tech is growing. Kids are seeing people on social media getting money, being themselves. And oh, by the way, you can get a certificate from Google and just, there are more accessible ways to get into tech that it's a fair game. Anything can happen, right?
Now, what about the aerospace and engineering space? Because I feel like that's a space that's hard to be entrepreneurial in. So, like, what does the future look like in that? Like,
Yeah, no. Hey, truth be told, I am not super sure on what it looks like. I will say there are a lot of restrictions, but there's a lot of energy around sustainable aviation, hydrogen aircraft, fuel cell, electric propulsion. So I think there's the biggest piece of aerospace in my view is just like the sustainability piece. But in terms of how to break into that and be an entrepreneur in that way, I mean, people do it, but those are the folks who.
I mean, we might see a new shift too, because you got between the CEO of Tesla and the CEO of Amazon, they both racing back and forth to the moon.
Oh man, and in that space, like I'm just talking commercial, like that's a whole other segment. UAM, unmanned aircraft, that's the drone, like urban air mobility, that's a whole nother segment. So there's just so much to say.
And I know you're in the entry phase of just really championing diversity in the space, especially for people of color, girls and women of color. How does that look in the future? Like, if we're successful at doing that, what does that look like in 5 years? And then what do next 5 to 10 years? And what do we have to do to create more sustainability, more influx of people of color, girls and women of color?
I hope I have the right partners to help me define that, because I think there are so many possibilities. I mean, in my mind, I think the best thing that can happen is for, big companies, entrepreneurs, investors, education systems to be a part of this path, be a pipeline to establish a pathway for more women of color, girls of color to enter this space. So I think what I would really love to see is some new businesses, new inventions come out from one of the girls who, is in my program. There was a really, really great idea from Girl Me Strong on how do we slow climate change. These two little girls.
I remember hearing about this idea.
Yeah,
let's not put it out there. I want nobody to steal it.
The fact that that's a great idea that came from children. I would love for ideas like that to be able to be developed and folks can be a part of that magic to see it thrive. So I think that is what the future can hold.
All right. So like you heard it here first. If you're an investor or you have some investment people, anybody who's passionate about championing this, hit us up. Hit me and Jasmine up so we we can make some changes in the future. Not only for our kids, but for all humankind. Like, I mean, we all live on this great planet, and there's so much that could be done to make it a better living place for everybody. So with that being said, me and you could probably chat like forever. But I try to keep these, in 45, 55, 60-minute segments. So if we ever get back to drive times or whatever people doing, I can't do the Joe Rogan thing. I can't talk for 5 hours and have people listen. I'll think you will listen to me for 5 hours. So what projects are you currently working on, and where can people find you?
Projects. So establishing the partnership. So the goal is a homegrown robotics program, a for us, by us type of thing. Working on establishing something like that. That might be, January 2022. Okay. And you can find me at LinkedIn. That's my normal place of social media. But also greaterthantech.sd on Instagram, Greater Than Tech on Twitter, Greater Than Tech, Facebook, LinkedIn. So you might have to put that in the show notes or something like that.
I'll make sure I put all this in the show notes. If you're driving, you can. Or don't start getting Twitter fingers and trying to put all this in your phone. We'll be in the show notes. Just come back to it. Jasmine, it's been such a pleasure. I'm thinking of the little girl who's probably listening to this, or the young woman who's in college right now trying to figure out her way. What some words of wisdom and advice you would give them?
The last thing I do want to say is mentorship.
Mentorship. Oh, how did we not talk about mentorship?
I super blew past. So when you said, what advice would you give them? I was really thinking, figure out what you like, research it. I didn't get to say mentorship. Mentorship is major key. So when you start looking in the details of what you want to do, start reaching out to people who are doing that and take advice from those people.
So did you have a mentor? Like, and what's some things that you really got from your mentor?
So I tweeted something maybe last week, and I said I have more mentors than friends right now, and it's amazing. So I just feel like there is no one mentor. There are so many people that have impacted my life in ways that they would never know, and I just feel like it's so important to be around people who are a breath of fresh air, are thriving, doing things, 10 times, 20 times better than you, and just be around them, have conversations with them. Like, the path has been so volatile and fun and exciting and chaotic to get here, but there's just been so many people who impacted me to help me become this person. So there is like no one person. Maybe there's one person for every single week.
She stay mentored up. She's like, I got to make sure I stay mentored up. Well, Jasmine, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for blessing us with your talents, your advice, your wisdom this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't get those last nuggets, mentorship. Keep mentors around you. People that can give you good advice. Not your Uncle Dilly Willie who ain't doing nothing, but he got an opinion about everything. But who we talking about. With that being said, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Rise Urbanation.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Rise Urban Nation.
Thank you for taking the journey.
Be sure to like, comment, and smash that subscribe button. And stay connected with Terrell on and off the show. Follow at Rise Urban Nation on all platforms.
Do what you love what you do. Don't chase the money. Let the money chase you.